Wyatt begins in like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Wyatt, and I'm your host, Wyatt O'Brien Evans. Grrr, woof, goddammit, woof, woof, woof. Hey, my listeners. As you know, one of the major goals of Wyatt is to shine a spotlight and present a platform for gay SGL, same-gender loving authors. And being a gay SGL author myself, I know all too well that sometimes it can be rather daunting to get the community to stand up and take notice of our good works. So having said all that, I'm proud and excited to welcome Mr. Robert A. Karl, the insightful and especially intriguing author, as today's special guest on Wyatt. We're going to get all the way down into Mr. Karl's absorbing novel titled Clubbed, a story of gay love, trials, tribulations, and triumphs, which was released a scant few months ago. So Robert will be pulling up to the mic post haste. And after the show, visit my online home, WyattEvans.com, the go-to destination for LGBTQ news, features, commentary, and entertainment. WyattEvans.com is visited by over 100 countries on the regular. Yeah, baby. And at WyattEvans.com, you will find my smoking hot, HAWT hot, Nothing Can Tear Us Apart series of novels. And the current installment is titled Frenzy! Yeah, I said Frenzy. And Frenzy is teeming with and jam-packed full of masculine romance, intrigue, danger, y'all. You know what danger looks like. And the blazing heat of 1,000 suns of erotic passion and steaming nastiness. And Delirium is on its way next year. Yeah, I said Delirium. More details to come. Oh, okay, wait. A programming note. My sometimes part-time co-host, Madam Pussy Galore, Cock-a-Doodle-Doo, Drag Queen Supreme, will not grace us with her appearance today. Thank God. You see, she's still rather tiffed and more than just a tad bit miffed about what happened to her here last time. Well, all I can say is good golly, Miss Molly. All righty now, let's get it on. Our special guest is Mr. Robert A. Karl, and his recent novel titled Clubbed, a story of gay love, trials, tribulations, and triumphs is an exceptional work. Now, let me tell you something, y'all. I had to do that because it sort of smooths me out. It makes me feel good. Anywho, Clubbed is receiving raves from influential reviewers, including Goodreads and male-to-male bookworm reviews. Now, Clubbed, a story of gay life, trials, tribulations, and triumphs, mostly explores gay life before AIDS hit and ends just as HIV is beginning to overwhelm the gay, SGL, same-gender loving community. Now, Mr. Karl, who's also an educator, paints a vibrant, colorful portrait of LGBTQ culture during that period of time. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Robert A. Karl. Talk at me. How the hell are ya?
I'm doing great. Really good here, Wyatt. And I just want to say greetings from beautiful San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Well, you know what? That's what I wanted to talk about a little bit first because I'm jealous as hell because I'm in Metro Washington and it's getting cold and you're tropical. What is up with that?
I'll tell you, every day the weather is exactly the same. It doesn't vary during the year at all. So there's no four seasons, which works for me exactly because it's always my favorite season, which is summer. And every day it's the high is in the mid 80s and the low is in the mid 70s. And that's the perfect range for me. So I'm happy, 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 gay, gay, gay here in gay San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Well, all I can say to that is good golly, Miss Golly, I'm jealous as hell. All right. Now, Robert, Clubbed is your first novel. So tell us, how does it feel having birthed your first baby? I mean, I know that when I published my first novel, I was absolutely exhilarated. I mean, it was a profound, life-changing experience for me, a feeling like none other. So chime in with how you feel.
I feel exactly the same way. It's been amazing, an amazing experience all around. And really, I have to say that what gave me the motivation to do it was being quarantined during the pandemic. So I had been thinking about these stories for years, and I never wrote them down, but I had always thought about it. And then I had all this time alone. And the other thing was, I didn't really know how to tell the story. I didn't know how to kind of make it focused. And then one day, the idea came to me, the title came to me, Clubbed. And I thought, all these people that I know, these characters in my mind, many of whom are based on myself and people that I know,
right.
They can all gather at the club and I can tell their stories kind of with the club as the central focus of where they hang out. They don't spend their lives at the club, but they spend their lives in the gay community.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to really tell diverse stories, not just one person. So I came up with this idea of everybody at the club has a story and every story deserves to be told. And that's what I tried to do. I tried to tell the stories of a number of people. So there are two main characters, but they kind of provide the backbone for the story where all these other people come and go and you hear little bits about them, but hopefully not too little, hopefully enough where you get to appreciate them in their lives. And so that's really how it all started. And I've been overwhelmed by the support. Like when I get a review and someone tells me that they enjoyed the story and they loved it and they identified with some of the characters and they love the characters, that's really important to me because I really wanted to give a positive outlook for how life was pre-AIDS. And not only that, I find joy in being gay. And I tried to have that come across with the main characters. And that's why it's called Trials, Tribulations, and Triumphs, because people did have problems, of course, but there were triumphs too. There were happy stories in the book as well. So I didn't want to make it negative. I didn't want to make it, all like angsty, but I did want to provide a realistic view of what life was like. It wasn't all a bed of roses, but I really hope that the joy of being gay comes through in the book as well.
Well, you're gonna give us the full Monty on Clubbed a little later, but for now, give us a teaser. Give us the elevator pitch. What, in like 25 words or less, what is Clubbed about?
Okay, I'm going to say it's about sex, drugs, lust, courage, loyalty, betrayal, drag divas, hustlers, porn, go-go boys. Anything is possible at the gay club scene, even love.
Well, you know what? You're my kind of guy. This is the stuff I like. I love it. I love it. Okay.
Yeah, notice it started with sex.
Yes.
Drugs.
Yeah. Well,
lust.
Well,
and then it goes on.
Look, I'll take 2 out of 3. I'll take sex and I'll take lust.
Okay. Well, drugs were a part of the scene, so I
Yeah,
couldn't just
true.
ignore that. But I don't promote it as something desirable in the
Right.
book. It has its place in club life, but in moderation, and hopefully, I'm not trying to encourage anyone to take drugs. No.
Cool, cool. Okay, buddy. Are you ready to sashay yourself down memory lane? Just travel through the corridors of time so we can get to know you better?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, Robert, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Philadelphia,
Ah.
which is a city in Pennsylvania. Hopefully, most of your listeners will know that, but just in case, it's the largest city in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I was born there, but right after first grade, my family moved to Harrisburg, which is in central Pennsylvania, which is a much smaller town.
Mm.
And that changed my life very much. And I lived in Harrisburg through high school. And then I went away to college at Penn State University. And the day I graduated from Penn State with my bachelor's in psychology, I moved right back to Philly.
Okay, let's go back a little bit because I always like to ask my special guest the following question. And here it is. What was Rob like as a boy, a little nipper? What
Oh
three
boy.
characteristics and qualities best describe you?
Well, I was not a little nipper. I was a big nipper because I'm tall.
How tall are you?
I'm s- I'm 6 feet 3 inches tall.
Oh,
I
cool.
used I used to be 6 feet 4 inches tall, but as time goes by, a little shrinkage comes along.
Yeah, it does.
But as a child, I'll tell you the first word that comes to mind when I think about myself as a kid
Mhm.
is that I was confused.
Oh, man.
There, there. I don't know if people can understand what it was like to not have the vocabulary to describe how you feel, because I
Mm.
didn't have that. Um, I was born in the 1950s. I'm not going to say the year, but I was born in the 1950s. And
Mhm.
back then, as I was growing up in the 60s, I know that there were queer people on TV, but there were no queer characters on TV. There were no
Right.
queer characters in books or magazines that I had access to. So I knew what I felt, but I didn't know how to explain it. And I really, honestly, I remember thinking, I must be the only person in the world who feels this way.
Well,
No one else can possibly feel this way because I never heard anybody talk about it.
let me slip this in really quickly. Remember Bewitched?
Oh, yes.
Remember Paulin, Uncle Arthur?
Oh, yes, I do.
Oh, Sammy, Sammy,
Right.
you listen. Oh, Sammy, Samantha, you look. You knew he was gay. You might not have been able to put a word to it, but oh, Sammy, you knew he was gay.
Right, exactly. But the show did not identify him as gay.
Right.
So therefore, as a kid, as I'm watching this, I see that he's different in the same way that I'm different. So that
Mm-hmm.
does give me a hint that there are other people. But really and truly, I felt so alone. I
Yeah.
really did. And I, I I'm go- I'm just going to say that it made it really hard to to I just identify who I was. What was my place in the world? It was very difficult. So that's why the first word is confused, because I was definitely confused as a child.
Okay, you have two more
Okay.
characteristics to tell us
All
about.
right. The next one is, and I will own up to this with pride today, but I was a big nerd. And I was the kid who was good in school. I was obedient in school. I was a good student. I looked like a nerd because I was tall and skinny and glasses and all that and stringy hair. And, when you think of a nerd, these are the things that you think about. And I acted like a nerd. I wanted to read books all the time. I wanted to be inside. My parents would try and get me to go outside to play with the other kids. And I I tried to do that, but nerdy. So first was confused and second was nerdy. But later on, I tried to reject that.
Mm.
And I have mixed feelings about that now because I think if I had embraced my nerdiness, I would have taken certain things more seriously than I did. And I'm
Ah.
talking about my college education, the first 4 years of my college education, where I was very anti-establishment. I was the hippie, all that kind of thing.
Wow.
But I,
Okay.
I was really trying to be the opposite of what I was in high school. And if
Yeah.
any of my high school friends are listening, I love you very much. But I was trying to reject that image that I projected in high school of being a nerd. And then,
Ah.
so do I have one more?
Yes, you do.
Okay. So this is a tough one for me because it strikes in my heart. I was lonely.
Oh.
I I I felt that I didn't fit in, number one. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't play sports with the other kids. I was terrible at sports. I was the boy who would play jacks and hopscotch and things like that. So and then the other thing is my parents sent all of us, my siblings and I, to Catholic school, which was not exactly in our neighborhood. So we rode a bus. So I didn't go to school with the neighborhood kids.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that made a difference. And I, at the time, liked being in Catholic school. I'm not a Catholic anymore. I'm going to say that. But at the time, I wanted to be there. So I can't complain about it. But I see how it affected me that I didn't hang out with the neighborhood kids because we didn't go to school together. So that
Ah.
made me feel more lonely than I think I would have if
Of
I had gone to the
course.
neighborhood school because you just didn't see these kids,
Mm-hmm.
all day. And I would get home late from school because I would have to wait for the bus, blah, blah, blah. And so, those are the three. And I hope they don't sound too negative because I don't feel
No.
like I had a really bad childhood,
Right.
but I did feel these ways about how I was.
No, 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 not negative at all. You're just being truthful. A lot of us have gone through that. So,
Right.
you know, and look where you are today, Mr. Author.
Well, I've come a long way, if I say so myself. I have no complaints about my current situation. I I have a beautiful place here. I just love being where I am, and I'm in the middle of this community. Let me go back to the community of people who are authors and readers, who
Nice.
many of whom have really embraced me and embraced my work, and I couldn't be
Hmm.
more happy about that.
Okay, now you are an adult. You attended Penn State. You earned a BA in psychology.
Yes.
So you followed a path into the field of education. I mean, you earned your teaching certificate, you obtained a Master of Education from Temple University, a principal certificate, certifications in educational technology. You're an overachiever. Tell us about these endeavors, Robert.
Well, I have to say, I was very lucky to find a profession that I not only loved to do, but I was good at it. So,
Mm,
so that both of these things are important. I encourage people when they're thinking about, what they want to do with their lives, find something that you enjoy, but find something that you can actually accomplish.
right.
And I felt that because I know I made a difference in the classroom. And I spent pardon me, I spent quite a number of years working in Philadelphia schools. And I just want to mention that the schools that I worked in were like 99.8% African American.
Really? Okay.
And that got me to appreciate this culture that I didn't really experience during my youth.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my youth, I lived in a suburban white area outside of Harrisburg. I didn't really know any Black people until I went to high school. And, but not to the degree when you're living in Philly and you're working in these schools and you see these kids, day after day after day, and you get to know them, you get to know their families. And I really got to appreciate their culture. And I still appreciate that culture. And I am so happy that I had that experience because it opened my eyes. And I wish more people could do the same and say the same, because I think that's really lacking in today's society.
Well, you know what, Robert? I totally agree with you. And I'm really glad you had that experience because it just stretched, fleshed your worldview. So, you know, that is awesome.
It's true because when I was a kid, one of the other things, or a quality I didn't mention, was that I was smart and I thought I knew everything, but clearly I didn't know everything. So I really appreciate knowing the world in the way that I do and being able to appreciate the diversity. I'm not afraid of people who are different than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And too many people are. And especially, and I'm just going to, if your listeners don't know, I'm a white guy. I'm going to call people, some people in the Caucasian race are afraid of people of color.
Mm.
And then you ask them about experiences. Well, they've had no experiences with people of color. So what are you afraid of? That's my question. And I wish I just wish people could get to know one another on a personal level and then appreciate the diversity rather than being afraid of it.
You know what? You're absolutely right, Robert. And I just say to people, we all take a dump the same way.
There you
So
go.
get over it. We all take the dump. We all take the pee-pee the same way.
Yep, absolutely.
We're all
Absolutely.
humans. Okay.
I like when you bring it down to that level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of all the way down, let's get all the way down into clubbed. Okay, let me first say, I love it, and I'm going to tell you why a little bit later. But what I want to ask you right now is to dig into a little bit more of what compelled you to write it. I think you said that losing many friends to the AIDS epidemic dramatically altered your world. So, Robert, did that play into the impetus behind you writing Clubbed?
Absolutely, because these people are not here to tell their stories anymore. And so I felt as I was writing it that I was trying to give voice to people who no longer have a voice.
Right.
And people who, because of a virus, are no longer here. And it doesn't, I'm not missing the point that we're in that same situation right now. Not that AIDS and COVID are the same, but there are people who are losing their lives now because of a virus, just like there were before. And again, what I wanted to do was I wanted people who are alive now to not forget the stories of the people who came before. Mm-hmm. And again, who are no longer here to tell their own story. So I tried really hard to give a voice to those people. And that's why the book is dedicated to the people who were lost in the pandemic and those who still remember them and mourn them, because I count myself among the people who still remember and mourn these people. I miss some of them so much. And I don't want to talk too much about that because I'll start crying and that will not be a good podcast.
Well, you know what? The important thing is that you're being your authentic self and you're just telling our listeners exactly how you feel.
Well, I'll be talking more about authenticity hopefully a little bit later, but I am trying my best to be my authentic self right now and in my life right now. Absolutely, yes.
Well, you're doing it, buddy. You're doing it. Now, I believe this installment of Clubbed is the first in a 3-part series.
That's correct. And I am working right now. I'm actually close to finishing the part 2, which is called Clubbed 2, Anxiety, Anger, Activism. Because I believe we went through those stages first, because this picks up when HIV is really starting to take hold in the community.
Right.
And again, it's not going to be a total downer. Every story isn't sad, but people were scared. This was a virus. Nobody knew how you caught it. Nobody knew. They didn't even know if it was a virus at first. It first came out as the gay cancer. And I remember hearing that and thinking, oh my God, what is a gay cancer? How do you get it? And no one knew. So people took all kinds of precautions. They didn't know whether it was safe to have sex. They didn't know if it was safe to kiss somebody. They didn't know if it was safe to eat, sharing utensils. Nobody knew anything about it. Mm-hmm. So we moved from that anxiety, that stage one, into anger. And the anger was fueled by the government refusing to acknowledge that this was a problem, because back then the government had an anti-gay agenda. And a lot of people in government were just as happy to see us dying as they considered it to be a solution to a problem. Can you imagine that people have that kind of attitude? This is a solution to the problem of gay people in our society, that a virus is attacking them and killing them, and they did nothing. And they wouldn't even talk about it. Like, I remember Ronald Reagan.
Oh, I was going to, I was going to mention. Mm-hmm.
So, and then activism is the third part, because we had to take the fight into our own hands.
Right.
The government wasn't going to come and help us. No one was going to come and help us. We had to help ourselves. So people banded together, and, they did all kinds of things, raising money for people who had the disease, who couldn't work, who would, lose their housing, not be able to provide meals for themselves. So there were all kinds of fundraisers, not only at clubs, but there were AIDS walks and all that sort of thing. And I participated in those activities. And I'll say, I wasn't like in the forefront of that. I wasn't like the leader of a group, but I participated to the degree that I could. Mm-hmm. And that's all I can ask of myself. So that's the sequel, and it will be coming out hopefully before the end of 2021. That's my goal.
Now, this current installment of Clubbed is on Audible, correct?
Say again?
This current installment of Clubbed is on Audible.
Yes, it is. It just came out on Audible 2 weeks ago. And let me give a little plug to Curtis Michael, who is the narrator. And this book would not be an audiobook if it wasn't for him. He contacted me while he was reading the paperback or the Kindle version. I'm not sure which one he had. But he was on a plane to Hong Kong. And he sent me a message through Instagram saying, I'm reading your book on a trip to Hong Kong, and I love it so much. What do you think about making an audiobook? And my first thought, and he hasn't heard me say this, but my first thought was, wow, an international jet setter is reading my book.
There you go.
He's on his way to Hong Kong, and he likes it. But the reality, now, he might be an international jet setter, but the reality is he had been visiting family in Canada, and he lives in Hong Kong, so he was on his way home. But just him saying, I'm on a plane going to Hong Kong, and I love your book, and what do you think about making it an audiobook? And I listened to some of his samples, and I loved his voice so much.
Awesome.
I said to him, you sound just like Joey sounds in my mind. And Joey is the narrator of the book. And to me, Curtis has the perfect voice for that. And he did a great job with all the characters and telling the story. And when I first heard it, I couldn't stop sobbing when I heard him read the final chapter. I just was overwhelmed. He did a fantastic job. Curtis Michael, everybody. Don't forget that name.
That is great. Now, dun, 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 dun. All right, now, my listeners, I am going to give my takeaways, my assessment of Clubbed, a story of gay love, trials, tribulations, and triumphs. First of all, seriously, Robert, it's one hell of a read.
Thank you.
It's like you're a fly on the wall. What I really like about it is that it keeps the reader engaged. It draws you in, everybody, and it holds you tight. Robert, your prose is relaxed, conversational. There's delicious angst and dramatic tension. And Clubbed paints a vibrant, colorful portrait of the diversity and nuances within the LGBT community of the time. So don't break your hand, Robert, patting yourself on the back. What I want you to do is to give us a reading. If you would grace us with that. And before you do, you have to give us a setup so we know what we're listening to.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your kind words. I appreciate that so much. It really means a lot to me. I don't have the words to express how I feel when someone, appreciates the work.
Mm-hmm.
So this reading is from chapter 2. And in chapter 2, Joey, who is the main character, well, he's one of the two main characters. There's Joey, the white kid from the suburbs of Philly. And there's Henry, the black kid who lives in Philly. And this is the scene where they meet. And so without further ado, I'm going to read a small part of chapter 2 of Clubbed. Remember that during this visit, I was a 19-year-old cute guy with a winning smile and a very cute butt. When I went to a bar, I was never carded, not once. But it didn't escape my notice that some people were always carded at certain establishments, specifically anyone who wasn't white. Sometimes black or brown people would be turned away, even if they had valid ID and really were old enough to drink legally. I would hear the bouncers accuse some guys of not looking like the photo on the ID or of having altered something. The bouncer always got the last word. There was no avenue for appeal. The truth is, some of the customers inside those white clubs actually wanted it that way. They wanted to be with their own kind. Others never even thought about it. It wasn't their problem. For me, being with my own kind meant being with other gay people in all their different colors and flavors. During those 2 weeks I spent exploring the gay side of Philly, I found that there were plenty of places outside of bars to meet guys. The Museum of Art, the Free Library, and various parks were known areas for guys cruising to meet other men for sex. I even heard about the merry-go-round, a one-block stretch along Spruce and Pine Streets where men in cars would circle the block looking for sexual encounters. I was open to all these possibilities. I didn't see any reason to restrict my cruising for men to bars and clubs. One evening, while hanging out on a park bench in Rittenhouse Square, I met Henry, a young black guy who had the most intensely beautiful eyes that I had ever seen. He was of average height and on the skinny side, wearing a crop top that showed his tight abs, but it was hard to look at anything besides those gorgeous brown eyes. Henry sat down on the bench beside me and immediately started talking to me as if we had been best friends forever. I would later find out that he was that friendly and engaging with almost everybody, a truly friendly and likable individual. He asked me if I wanted to go out for a drink with him, mentioning the name of a club that I hadn't yet heard about. This was a club that wouldn't be advertising in PGN or any other publication. It was more of an underground place, only advertised by word of mouth, keeping the secret only among those who would be interested in a place like this. Feeling adventurous and always wanting to know more about the gay life here, I readily agreed. We took the subway to a station in North Philadelphia and then walked a few blocks west of Broad Street. The club was located in a basement under a corner store. A handwritten chalkboard sign identified the club as Sharky's. Inside, it was packed with men, almost all of them black men. There were 2 bars along the walls, a dance floor in the middle, sort of a typical layout. Although the air conditioners were set to full blast, the heat inside was almost unbearable. That heat, combined with the odor of strong perfumes and colognes, cigarette and marijuana smoke, almost took my breath away. But there was no denying from the moment we entered that the atmosphere here was electric. Without this crowd, the bar would just be a typical place for hanging out and grabbing a drink. It was the clientele that made this place so very special. After all, these were gay men in a relatively safe space for them, so they felt free to express their true selves. Many of them did so in their manner of dress. To me, it resembled a fashion show with guys dressed in the latest fashionable attire with plenty of flamboyance meant to catch the eye of an attractive male. And then from there, the chapter goes on where they watch a drag show, and then they go to Henry's place to spend the night. But that's kind of, and that isn't the club that's in the book. The book is about a different club, but here they go to a club because Joey is still in the process of planning this gay club that he is thinking about establishing.
Thank you, Robert. Nice. You know what? I have an admission.
Go ahead.
I love cute butts. So, when you mentioned that, I said yes. I said that works for me because I'm an ass man. So and that works.
That works for the bouncers too. They let they let those cute butts go walking right on in.
Oh man, listen, thank you for that. I've got a question for you about the importance of truth in writing, Robert. An author's story must be authentic. You have to know what you're talking about, which requires necessary research. What say you about that?
I absolutely agree. One thing about writing this particular book was I did some research just to make sure I had dates correct, but I knew Philadelphia like my left hand. I mean, I just recognized, I know the streets, I know the clubs, I know all the different areas, the neighborhoods. So that part wasn't difficult, and the stories weren't difficult either. But I did research to make sure that I didn't mess up and say that they were playing a song at the club in 1982 that didn't exist in 1982. I wanted to make sure I had those details right. Mm-hmm. So, and I think just the whole gay experience, I want to say one thing about authenticity. I think I mentioned already that I'm very proud to be gay, and I was always happy to be gay. And I know that isn't true for everybody, but I think, and I actually like the word queer because to me it encompasses more than just gay men. So, right. But I want to talk about like the queer identity. I saw a headline just like 2 days ago where some Republicans said that straight people are superior to gay people. Okay. Now, I don't believe that gay people are superior to straight people, but I do believe that we have a gift. And the gift is to look at the world in a different way than most straight people do. And I believe that in my heart. So that's why I appreciate being around gay people. And not that I reject straight society like the way they reject me, quite frankly, because I've been rejected by that society. And I felt that, and I know so many people have, and I don't want to reject them, but I really think, pardon me, that we look at the world in a different way, and that's why there are so many artists who are queer that, they express themselves in a way that just to me is magical. And so I appreciate all that, and these stories came from my heart. I did not struggle with the stories. I didn't write an outline. I sat down at the computer, and for each chapter, I would have some vague idea of a couple of the characters and a situation, and the stories would just pour out of me. It was like it was a release for me to finally tell some of these stories, because I'll be honest, the people that from my past, that, what you expect when you get older, that you'll have friends that you can talk about the good old days with. I don't have that because they're gone.
Oh, yeah. So actually then writing it was cathartic for you.
That's exactly right. That's the perfect word. It was cathartic.
Wow. That is just, thank you, Robert, for sharing that with us. Now let's go to that crucial PMP. And I'm not talking about a pimp, y'all. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I love acronyms. Or initials. I'm talking about the promotion marketing piece. Because, I strongly believe that, particularly for indies, the independent authors, it is absolutely critical that you begin to plot your promotion marketing piece actually before you put pen to paper. So let's delve into how you developed your plan and how you executed it.
I wish I had heard your advice before I started my book because
Uh-oh.
I did not know. I did not know anything about promoting. I didn't know anything about marketing. I sat down and wrote the book, and when I was finished, I did not know what, well, I struggled with the actual publishing because, you have to fit Amazon's formatting and all that sort
Yeah.
of thing. And so that was not overly difficult, but it was a hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would say to anyone who's thinking about being independent and independent publishing, first of all, my reason for publishing on my own is I did look at a couple of publishing houses. I never sent a manuscript to any of them because what I read was, well, in 12 to 24 months, we'll let you know. And I'm like, 12 to 24 months to let me know?
Yep.
No, I don't have 12 to 24 months to wait for you to make a decision. And then you're going to start editing and putting your input into it. I wanted the story to be mine.
Right.
And I wanted to have full rights and responsibilities for it, which that's the part of indie publishing that's good.
Right.
What I didn't know about were things like ARCs, advanced reader copies. I had never even heard of such a thing. It wasn't until I posted a message on an a Facebook group, a gay writers group, and I was saying, how do you get people to review your book? And this one person who happens to be Puerto Rican and he lives in Washington State now, he sent me a message and he said, well, we use Instagram. He does comic books.
Oh,
he
wow.
said, we use Instagram. And if you look at my Instagram, you'll see some reviewers in the tags. And then this whole world opened up to me because I just didn't know. Now, you're familiar with Bookstagram, the Bookstagram portion of Instagram where people talk about nothing but books, which is a marvelous part of Instagram. And that, like, I had no reviews. I had the people who bought it were the people that I knew, my friends. That was it. And then I progressed. And now for the second book, I'm in much better position to be able to let people know what's coming because I've already done like a title reveal. I mean, I got on Instagram and people were like, well, who are you? Where did you come from? I have a book. I hope you'll read it. But I have to say that the community has been very accepting and supportive for the most part. And I'm very happy about that.
Well,
but really, again, anyone who's thinking about doing this, prepare yourself and prepare ahead. I just saw a notice today about a book that's coming out in October of 2022. And I'm like, wow, you are really prepared.
You know what, Robert? I can relate to what you're saying because when I wrote my first book and was publishing it called Uncensored, Nothing Can Tear Us Apart Uncensored, it was like this being on a treadmill. Now, I got two offers from one company was small, the other one was medium, but they wanted to change the story. They wanted to change the point of view. They wanted to just change me. And I said no. So what I decided to do was to create my own company, Narrowbow Universal, y'all. And I published my own stuff. And you keep your control and all of that good stuff. So when you are independent like we are, my listeners, you really have to get that promotional marketing piece, start working on that from the jump. Yep.
I really appreciate what you just said because, when these publishing companies want to change you and your story, That's problematic for me. And I don't know what clubs would have come out like if someone else had gotten their hands on it. And it was a very personal story for me. I wouldn't want someone who doesn't know these characters to be changing them. And so, again, that's the positive side of independent publishing. You do have control over that, but staying authentic, being independent allows you to remain authentic, in my opinion.
You're absolutely right. You just have to bust your ass in promotion and marketing. You really, really do. And I mean, I discovered you, my friend, on Instagram, and you do a great job in promoting yourself in clubs. And I said, I want this guy on my show. I want this guy on Wyatt.
I appreciate that because I did start a hashtag on Instagram called Where's My Book Wednesday. And the reason I did that was because I had seen authors promoting their books. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, I want to be able to promote my book at least once a week, but not repeat the same message over and over and over. So I came up with this idea that if I could show my book being in different places, that provides another part of a story and keeps it more interesting rather than just staring at the cover of my book and me saying, go buy this, So I started off with posting pictures around San Juan of my book. And I invited other authors to join in if they would like to. And a few have, but there's always room for more. And the other thing is I asked readers to send me pictures of my book where in their location. So, and I appreciate whenever people do this because I have pictures of the book in Baltimore and in Vermont and in South Carolina. But I want to mention one in particular. And again, I love all of them, but there's a story behind one of them. This guy contacted me and said, I'm going on a cruise to Italy and I'm going to take your book with me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I was on a cruise to Italy, I'm not even sure I would take my book with me. No, that's a joke. Anyway, he sent me pictures of my book in Naples, Italy. Oh. And one of the pictures it was outside Rosa Parks's old home.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, first of all, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful photo of my book, and there's her old home. But I said to myself, why is Rosa Parks's home in Italy?
Right.
And so I did what is considered research these days. I Googled Rosa Parks's home in Italy, and I found out that this artist first of all, Rosa Parks had moved from Montgomery, Alabama to Detroit, and she stayed there with her family. And because of redlining and that kind of ghettoization of certain communities, the home had become really dilapidated and it was ready to be demolished. And so this artist purchased it, and he first took it to Berlin, and then he moved it to Italy. He tried to get people in the United States to take it, but deals kept falling through and things like that. So I want to read you a little quote of what he said, because his name is Ryan Mendoza, and he bought this house, and he said this: there are 1,500 monuments to the Confederacy. There are 76 monuments to the Civil Rights Movement. Let this be the 77th, meaning in the United States. So here's my question. Where are the people in the United States who have the ability, and I'm talking about the financial ability, to move this house from Italy to the United States? And I'm going to get very personal here, and I'm going to say, where is Oprah Winfrey? Does Oprah know about this? And if she doesn't, I want one of your listeners, because I'm sure one of your listeners knows Oprah, and let her know about this and ask her to do something about it. Because I feel strongly that this house does not belong in Italy. It belongs somewhere in the United States. And I think Oprah, if she heard this, she would agree with me. And I don't have a direct way to contact Oprah. So I'm just going to try and ask someone to let her know, because it would be great if this could be moved back to the United States. And if it wasn't for Where's My Book Wednesday, I would have no idea even about it. I never would have known.
Okay, now look, my listeners, calling Oprah. And listen, when you all contact Oprah, have her to talk to me because I want to show and own. But that's neither here nor there. Robert, let me ask you, closing argument time, my friend. Why should folks take the time to purchase Clubbed, a story of gay love, trials, tribulations, and triumphs?
I want to encourage people to read this book because I want you to know about life as it was. And I want you to experience some of the joy of being gay. And I want you to understand that not all gay people are the same. Someone in a review of my book said, I kind of thought all gay people were the same, and I'm kind of surprised that they're different. Well, no, we're not all the same. And we experience life just as everyone else does. And these stories, I guarantee you, they are authentic, they're real, and I believe they are joyful and they're sad. And this book makes me laugh and it makes me cry. And I think it will do the same for any of your listeners. So I encourage you to try it out because you maybe are, a child of the 21st century. And I want you to know something about the 20th century that maybe you didn't know before. And another reviewer said to me, maybe you're exposing people to a world that they don't know existed, and it still exists to this day. So I just hope that people will embrace that idea, and I really and truly think that people will enjoy the experience of reading Clubbed.
Mr. Karl, you have acquitted yourself well. Now, how can we purchase Clubbed?
Clubbed is available on both on Amazon in paperback and Kindle versions. So you can just, in the search, if you type in Clubbed Robert Karl, it jumps right out at you. Wonderful. And my name is Robert Karl, Karl. And it's also available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes in audiobook format. So if you can get it in any format that you prefer. And I know people have their preferences for how they like to experience stories. So I encourage you to, pick your favorite and just go for it.
Well, my friend, what's on tap for the new year for 2022? What appearances do you have, projects, that sort of thing?
I don't have any appearances, but I will say that I'm hoping that as Clubbed 2 comes out, that my promotions will pay off in a way that I'll have better exposure than I did for Clubbed, the first book. And if anyone wants to contact me, I don't know if I can give out that information.
Yes, that was my next question. Give us all of your social media.
Okay, so Facebook, it's just Robert Karl, and that's Robert Karl, Karl. And by the way, in the sequel, I have two Karls fighting for attention with each other, one Karl with a C and one Karl with a K. Ooh. So I'm having a little bit of fun with that because people never know how to spell my name. But anyway, on Instagram, it's at @RobertKarl_NPR, at @RobertKarl_NPR. And I also have an email address for photos for Where's My Book Wednesday, robert.karl.author@gmail.com.
Wonderful. You are coming back next year. You do know that, don't you?
I certainly hope so. Let me tell you, this has been an honor and a privilege. And I was so nervous before today. I told you my spidey sense was tingling. And it was tingling all day today. And you made me feel so relaxed. And this has been a totally enjoyable experience. And let me just say to everyone, I'm not just here to talk about my book, but Wyatt's books are outstanding. So please check them out as well, because I'm telling you, I am having like a joyride reading them right now.
All I can say is, oh, Tito, give me a tissue. Give me a tissue. But no, seriously, thank you so much. Because it's really important for authors to get validation from each other, and, we want to tell each other the good, the bad, the pretty, the ugly, whatever. So I really appreciate you saying that. I really, really do.
Thank you. And I feel the same way. And I do agree with you. Us authors, we need to stick together, and we don't need to compete with each other, because there's plenty of buyers out there. There are millions and millions of readers. We don't have to compete. We can cooperate. And I strongly believe that, and especially us independents, more power to us.
Well, Mr. Robert A. Karl, thanks for visiting. Wyatt, you gotta come back.
Absolutely. Just let me know when. And I'll be watching you on Instagram.
All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Take care now.
So, y'all, there you have it. You can find the official Wyatt podcast page on WyattEvans.com. The official hashtag is Wyatt on Air. And hey, if you want to be a guest on Wyatt, or you just have comments, email me at WyattOnAir@gmail.com. And you can follow me, Wyatt O'Brien Evans, your host, on Facebook.com/Wyatt O'Brien Evans, on Twitter at Mr. Woe, MISTERWOE, and on Instagram at Mr. Wyatt O, MRWYATTO. And be sure to check out my Nothing Can Tear Us Apart series of novels, the latest being Frenzy, and its predecessor, Rage, all at WyattEvans.com. So until next time, y'all, woof, goddammit, woof, woof, woof. Ah.